If superhero stories work for you on screen or in comics, the jump into books is easier than it looks. What usually matters is not cape continuity, it is emotional shape. Some readers want rivalry and power, some want teamwork and momentum, some want moral pressure and the feeling that heroism costs something real. This guide stays beginner-friendly and avoids lore traps. It focuses on books that capture different superhero pleasures without asking you to memorize decades of backstory. You can treat this list as 3 bridges. Vicious gives you the sharp rivalry and power politics that comic fans often want. Steelheart gives you a clean, high-energy entry that feels close to blockbuster pacing. Watchmen and Invincible sit closer to comic tradition, but they reward different moods. The Boys and Hench push into darker satire and systems thinking. Kavalier and Clay explores the dream behind the superhero idea itself. American Gods broadens the frame and shows how myth and hero logic overlap. The goal is simple. Pick the flavor you already love. Start there and let one good match pull you deeper. Another useful way to think about the topic is medium confidence. Some picks ask you to trust prose first. Others ask you to trust panels first. This guide gives you both, so you can choose the least intimidating route. That is more valuable than chasing the loudest recommendation online, because the right first match creates momentum, and the wrong one usually ends the experiment too early. Vicious, V.E. Schwab. A sharp, modern fantasy about power, resentment, and rivalry in a world that feels close enough to ours to stay clear and fast. This is one of the best starting points for superhero fans who like the idea of origin stories but do not want a bright training montage. The appeal here is tension. 2 driven people take extraordinary abilities seriously, and the book keeps asking what power does to ambition, friendship, and self-justification. It feels like a prestige adaptation in prose form. The language is accessible, the structure gives you movement early. The emotional hook is strong without needing encyclopedic world-building. Vicious is especially good for viewers who like superhero stories when the line between hero and villain stays unstable. It does not require comic knowledge. It does not ask you to decode a shared universe. It simply gives you a concentrated version of rivalry, consequence, and escalating choices. If you usually enjoy stories built around one central conflict rather than a huge cast, this is the cleanest recommendation in the list. It also works well as a bridge from darker films into adult speculative fiction because it feels controlled rather than overwhelming. Steelheart, Brandon Sanderson. A fast, high-energy story about a ruined city, overwhelming powers, and the kind of reading experience that rewards momentum over complexity. This is the most beginner-friendly book in the lineup for someone who wants the feeling of a superhero blockbuster. The prose is clear, the chapters move quickly, the setup is easy to understand. Most important, the book gives you the pleasure of big powers and public scale without making the reading feel heavy. That matters for viewers who love comic films but do not always finish novels. Steelheart is also useful because it shows how superhero fiction can work in a prose series without losing spectacle. You still get strong visual moments in your head, but the book remains readable and decisive. If your favorite part of superhero stories is momentum, plans, reversals, and seeing a team push against impossible odds, this is the safest pick. It is especially good after a reading slump because it respects your attention. It does not bury the appeal under dense explanation. It gives you a strong premise, a clear target, and a satisfying sense of forward motion from the beginning. It is also a practical recommendation for younger adult viewers, returning readers, or anyone who wants a first superhero novel that explains itself through action. You can finish the opening stretch quickly and know whether the tone fits you. That clarity is rare, and it is exactly why the book works so well as a starting block. Watchmen, Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. A dense, iconic graphic novel with a serious tone, layered structure, and a city-scale mood that asks what heroism means when institutions crack. This is not the first recommendation for every beginner, but it is essential for superhero fans who want to understand why the genre changed. Watchmen matters because it takes familiar heroic imagery and treats it with adult pressure. The result is not just darker, it is more analytical. You read it for atmosphere, construction, and the way every choice feels deliberate. For this channel, the key reason to include Watchmen is decision clarity. If you love superhero stories when they feel morally uneasy, politically charged, and formally ambitious, this is your book. If you mainly want light banter and a quick rush, start elsewhere and come back later. That is not a criticism. It is the right fit question. Watchmen rewards patience. It also helps comic readers move toward literary graphic novels because it proves the medium can carry the same weight people expect from serious prose. Think of it as a landmark rather than a casual sampler. Invincible, Robert Kirkman, Cory Walker, and Ryan Ottley. A clear, energetic superhero comic with strong momentum, a readable visual style, and a long runway for readers who want room to grow. Invincible is one of the easiest bridges from television or film into comic reading because it keeps the appeal straightforward. You get powers, conflict, development, and an expanding sense of scale, but the book stays emotionally legible. It does not feel like homework. That makes it a strong choice for viewers who like the idea of comic runs, yet feel lost when a series depends on crossover knowledge. What separates Invincible from many entry points is balance. It can be exciting and direct, but it also gives you reasons to keep going beyond the first burst of novelty. The cast has space to matter. The world opens up at a comfortable pace. The reading experience becomes addictive because each volume feels like progress, not maintenance. If you want a comic recommendation that feels modern, approachable, and rewarding over time, this is probably the cleanest long-form pick in the video. It is a commitment, but it is an inviting one, rather than an intimidating one. The Boys, Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson. A brutal satirical comic for readers who want superhero stories stripped of polish and pushed toward anger, parody, and institutional rot. This recommendation needs a careful frame. The Boys is not here because it is universally beginner-friendly. It is here because many superhero fans specifically ask for darker material and assume darker always means better. That is not true. Darkness works only when it matches your taste. This comic is aggressive, cynical, and intentionally abrasive. If that sounds appealing, it can be a very direct recommendation. If it does not, skip it without guilt. Editorially, this book matters because it shows one extreme of the genre spectrum. It treats hero culture as public spectacle and power abuse. That makes it useful for viewers who want satire first and comfort never. But it is also the clearest example of why taste matching matters more than popularity. You do not need to read it to be a real superhero fan. You read it only if you actively want that harsher mode. In this guide, it works best as a specialist pick after you already know you enjoy anti-heroic, confrontational stories. Hench, Natalie Zena Walschatz's. A witty contemporary novel about damage, labor, and the systems around hero culture, told with a voice that feels sharp without becoming exhausting. Hench is one of the smartest bridge books in this video, because it approaches superhero logic from the side. Instead of asking you to admire power first, it asks what power leaves behind. That shift makes the story feel fresh even if you already know the broad shape of hero and villain worlds. The reading experience is brisk, modern, and very easy to follow. It has enough bite to feel adult, but it stays accessible. This is the recommendation for viewers who enjoy superhero settings most when they expose unintended consequences, corporate behavior, or public image games. It is also a strong option for prose readers who do not usually buy comics. The concept is immediately understandable, the tone is memorable. Most important, it gives you something genuinely different while still delivering the superhero-adjacent satisfaction you came for. If Vicious is the rivalry pick, Hench is the systems pick. Start here when you want irony, social pressure, and a perspective that feels new without becoming obscure. The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay. Michael Chabon. A rich literary novel about creativity, ambition, and the cultural dream that helped make superhero mythology feel modern in the first place. This is the recommendation that broadens the channel from consumption to understanding. You do not read this book because you need lore. You read it because it explains through feeling and craft why heroic imagination became such a powerful part of popular culture. It is more reflective than the other picks. The pace is steadier. The reward is depth. For superhero fans, that matters. Sometimes the next right read is not another capes and powers story. Sometimes it is a book that deepens your relationship to the form. Kavalier and Clay does exactly that. It carries energy, but it also carries history, aspiration, and artistic longing. If you like the idea of comics as cultural invention, or if you want one literary recommendation that still feels tied to superhero DNA, this is the strongest choice in the list. It is not the lowest friction entry, but it is one of the most rewarding because it gives you context without feeling like homework. American Gods. Neil Gaiman. A mythic, atmospheric fantasy that treats belief, icons, and modern identity as living forces, creating a broader version of the same heroic logic many superhero fans already love. This is not a cape book. That is exactly why it belongs here. Many people who enjoy superhero stories are really responding to myth. They like symbols, larger-than-life figures, hidden rules, and the feeling that ordinary life sits next to something bigger. American Gods provides that scale in a more literary and atmospheric mode. Start here if your favorite superhero stories are the ones that feel ancient under the surface. The book is less about action rhythm and more about mood, idea, and the emotional weight of belief. It proves that you can move from comics and franchise storytelling into richer prose without losing the sense of wonder. For some viewers, this will be the most surprising recommendation in the whole video. It works because it respects the same appetite from a different angle. If you want symbolic scope instead of team battles, this is your bridge. It is a strong move from fandom reading into broader fantasy and contemporary myth-making. Once you strip away costumes and continuity, superhero taste usually falls into a few simple lanes. If you want rivalry and moral instability, start with Vicious. If you want the cleanest blockbuster energy, start with Steelheart. If you want to understand the genre at a deeper level, move to Watchmen. If you want a welcoming long comic run, choose Invincible. If you want sharp systemic critique, take Hench. If you want the harshest satire, and you know you enjoy abrasive material, then The Boys becomes relevant. There is also a second decision layer. Do you want prose or comics first? Prose often works better for viewers who already read novels or want a clean entry without visual continuity concerns. Comics work better when you love panel rhythm, visual storytelling, and the feeling of following a run over time. Neither route is more serious. The best route is the one you will actually keep reading. That is the principle behind the whole video. Do not choose by reputation alone. Choose by reading friction. The easier the first match feels, the more likely you are to build real reading momentum afterward. Here is the simplest recommendation stack. If you want one safest starter, read Steelheart. If you want one best adult prose pick, read Vicious. If you want one comic that is easy to continue, read Invincible. If you want one classic that changed the genre, read Watchmen. If you want one literary bridge that explains why superhero culture matters, read The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay. That structure keeps the whole topic manageable. You do not need to sample everything. You need one accurate first step. From there, the path opens naturally. If your taste gets darker, move from Vicious toward Hench or The Boys. If your taste gets broader and more mythic, move toward American Gods. If your taste gets more medium-specific, stay with Invincible or circle back to Watchmen. For this channel, that is the real goal. Not to prove range, to remove hesitation. Start with one book that matches the version of superhero storytelling you already trust. Then use the full long guide to decide your second step and avoid wasting time on the wrong mood. The safest channel mindset is simple. Start narrow, finish one thing. Notice what kind of superhero feeling you actually want more of. Then expand on purpose instead of by habit.